So let's start by making sure that we're standing properly. So you couldn't do this against the wall, remember? So we're trying to line ourselves up, we're trying to get rid of any excessive curves. So we don't want the spine to be really curved either way. So a lot of this is to do with how you stand, where your weight is and where your hips are. So feet about hip width apart, that means that your ankles are under your hip joints. And then from the side, it's easier to see really what we're doing here. We're trying to not have the hips over the front of the feet, but the hip joints over the heels. So you could start by just moving backwards and forwards. Like I say, if you stand with the wall behind you, have a little gap behind your heels. And then see if you can bring the back of your hips closer to the wall so they're actually over your ankles. And then just make sure your upper body isn't forward, bring your rib cage back. And if you feel a little bit unstable, remember we're dropping the weight into the feet. So when you do this, try and think about where the weight is in your feet. It doesn't mean that it should just be in your heels, but it should be through the whole of both feet. So when you're doing this, you can see there how unbalanced, yeah? If you have your weight in the wrong place, you're not as stable. So if you come back and then soften your knees. So what you don't want to do is bring the weight back and then lock your knees. So drop that tailbone, almost imagine that your thighs are rolling out a little bit. So we're not actually moving them, but have a sensation of rolling those thighs out. So we bring the weight over the heels, we roll the thighs out, and we push down into the big toe joints. We make sure that the bones coming from our toes into our foot, those 5 bones, that you can feel them on the floor. So think about feeling the balls of the feet on the floor. The weight's over the hips, we're rolling the thighs out and pushing down into those 5 bones, the big toe joint. And you feel that you are kind of stable, you are really standing on the ground. And then from there, pull up through the back of the head. So you can see it from all different sides there, try and get an idea. Maybe do the first one sort of in the mirror to see how it feels, how it looks, so you can think about when it's right. And then go by how it feels, so you don't have to keep looking in the mirror. So move those hips around and then come back till you're lined up. And then what we're going to try and do is keep nice and lined up. Now remember, weight pushing down to the floor, pulling up through the back of the head. You should feel that you have a little bit more support. Shoulders, try and just open your chest. Don't try and do too much with the shoulders. And then if you can, just tuck your chin. From there, we're going to push down into the feet, lift up through our core, whether that's just you lengthening through the back of the head or actively engaging your core, is up to you, but it's very slight, remember, it's never 100%. And then from there, we're going to try and tip from the ankles, so we're just leaning forward, but we're still pushing into the feet, into the heels. You might feel your bottom hurt a little bit, that's okay. But try not to stiffen your upper body here, really nice and relaxed, pulling up through the back of the head. We're just swaying. You can lift your feet a bit as you come back if you want to. But really, let's try and stay planted. So if you take your toes off and your heels off, that's going to be harder. So let's see if we can just stay planted first of all and stay in good posture before we add anything to it. So remember, in clinical Pilates, we're always trying to get good technique before you move on. So if lifting your heels made you bow through your body, you wouldn't lift your heels. You would stay nice and stable. So that's all we're going to work with today. So just practicing that good posture. And then when you come back, make sure every time you finish any exercise that you're back in good posture. So we always start from a good point. So we're going to come into pedal feet now. This is about hip stability, so we need to squeeze those glutes. Feel like you've got a little bit of tension, so you're squeezing around towards the centre and holding that little bit of tension. But we're not moving the feet, so as you squeeze, again push down into those big toe joints, into those 5 bones into your feet. Lift up through the back of the head, so we're lengthening, making sure that tailbone's dropping down. And then as you breathe out, engage your core and squeeze the bottom maybe a little bit harder. Soften one knee and see if you can lift that heel without shifting your weight. Now if you do this slowly, it's quite difficult. So we're going to take the feet a bit closer to make it a little bit easier to move, and then then start a little bit faster. So you soften one knee, keep the weight in both feet, keep everything back, see if you can lift that heel. Take a breath in. As you breathe out, engage and lift. See if you can keep your bottom squeezing. So if you do this relatively sort of flowing, not fast to start with, and then, and also remember, if you're standing on a really squishy mat, that makes it harder. So it's up to you how difficult you make this. But I want you to do a level where you can control it. So that means if you can do it here and you can slow it down a bit, you're going to have to use your glutes more, you're going to have to use your core more, so you're going to work harder. But if you're doing it at that level and you can't control it and you're shifting weight from side to side, or you've moved your hips forward, then that's too difficult for you. Go back a little bit, make it a little bit easier. So just do enough that you feel it test you a little bit. Maybe do 10, 12, it's up to you. You want to feel that you are testing yourself a little bit. And then of course we come back and we should still be in good posture, so it doesn't hurt to check that and make sure. We're coming now into our side reaches, so this isn't about collapsing down to the side or reaching as far as you can. It's always about the length of the spine. So with the lower body, we're not tensing the legs, we're not locking knees. We're keeping the weight, we're keeping the bottom working a little bit. And we've also got that long spine. So to come over to the side, we're going to lift this side of the ribs. So as you breathe out, engage through your core, lift up, and draw this side of the ribs up and over. Trying to keep the weight in both feet. Take a breath in. As you breathe out, engage your core. Now you're lifting this side up, back to level, and then up over to the other side. Again, both weight in the feet. Also watching what's happening with the rib cage. So as you come over, what we don't want to do is sort of push the rib cage forward. We want to keep that tucked in. So keeping our good posture the whole time. Remember, you don't have to do enormous breaths, it's just normal breathing. But just start to get an idea of what your body's doing, how it wants to cheat, so keep them shoulders relaxed. Think about where the weight is and come back to the centre. And moving into the hinges. So the hinges are about moving through the hip. So this is about sitting back through the hip. Sitting back without lifting the tailbone, trying to keep, again, the body long, the spine long, the core working, not arching your back, not trying to move forward or arch in any way. So this takes a fair bit of hip stability again. We're pushing down into the feet. We're going to try and stick the bottom back. So rather than forward bending or pushing knees forward, we're going to sit back. And then when we get here, we're going to take a breath in. As we breathe out, we're going to push the feet down into the floor. Come all the way out and maybe squeeze the bottom a little bit if you can. So you can just breathe in on the way down, nice and relaxed, sitting back. Watch where your head is. We want to be sort of looking down here, so you can see that I've stayed lined up. And then we push down as we breathe out. Take a nice breath in. And breathe, push. Now if it helps you, remember what I said, if you slightly, it plants you, so it's using your hip stability, you just slightly have a sensation of rolling your legs out, but pushing down into the big toe joints and those 5 bones. So to do that on the way up may really help you. Remember, we're trying to keep the knees the same distance. We don't want the knees to come in. And back into that good posture. From here, we're going to make sure that our shoulders are relaxed back, and we're keeping our rib cage down. We're standing our ground, we're nice and long through the spine, so tailbone dropping down, pulling out through the back of our head. We're going to keep the body exactly where it is. And as we breathe out, push into the floor, maybe engage your core a little bit if you feel you need to. Lengthen let the shoulders come with them. Keep the shoulders back. And only lift as far as you can without your ribcage starting to move. So there's no spinal movement. So as you breathe out, imagine your shoulder blades floating, sliding down your back. Nice long arms. And breathe out here on the way up. Take a breath in on the way down. Keep watching those knees. Keep making sure we're not locking the knees. And if you find it difficult, just don't go as far. Do a smaller movement. And if you find it easy, lengthen the arms a bit more. Remember, we're not letting go of the rib cage. We're trying not to lift the shoulders either. So there's your standing practice.